Everyone, welcome back to the workshop. And you may have caught my shop update where I talked about I am working on a new enclosure for some of these slightly larger diode laser engravers. And I'm at the point where I'm trying to work on the exhaust to pull the air out of the enclosure. And in this design, I'm wanting the air to come down through the honeycomb and going to be exhausting out the back. I want that airflow to be pulling the air down away from the module rather than coming back up and possibly being sucked in back through that if I had it up higher. So we've got an area down below that's about 5 inches that I can work with, and I need to make a port. Now I'm going to be piping it into my current 4-inch ducting right now, and so that is the size I'm going to be basing it off of. And I figured this would be a good opportunity to play around with the 3D printers and do another little run through with Tinkercad. So we're going to jump into the office. We're going to play around with Tinkercad and see how we can design one up, 3D print it out, and then we'll be able to start playing around with how we're going to slap it onto this enclosure after that. So if you want to check that out, you want to learn a little more about 3D printing in Tinkercad, stay tuned. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm in the office and I'm going to take a look at some options. Now, I do intend to use the 3D printer back here, the Bambu Labs A1. It's great printer, works well for this type of applications. But if you don't have a 3D printer, you're doing something like this, there are a couple options you can look at. So let me jump over to those real quick. So here at Home Depot, this would be something that could work. This is a starting collar takeoff. You would drill the port through the plywood, and then you'd kind of bend these flanges back, maybe seal it off with some tape. And you know, it's about $6 there. Otherwise, out on Amazon, and this is something I've purchased for one of my older enclosures, they do have this 4-inch duct mounting plate, a single one for $9. Again, that would work just fine as well. But I've got the 3D printer. We can go ahead and design our own. I've got the filament. It's not going to cost much in filament, and it's not going to take a whole lot of time. So let's jump into Tinkercad and start playing around with that. So here in Tinkercad, and I've done another video on kind of getting started with this in 3D printing. So you might want to check that out. I'm going to kind of continue with some of the tips and tricks here. Couple things real quickly here. We're in Tinkercad. You can sign up. This is a free online software to do some basic modeling, and some people actually make some more advanced things with it. It's pretty cool, but this is something I've played off and on with, and I know a lot of people have asked what's a good 3D modeling tool to use. So I'm trying to show it as much as I can. I am by no means an expert on this. There's a lot of things I can learn about it, but I want to show you some simple things we can do with this. So we've opened up a new 3D model. We've got our work plane here, and a couple things you might want to do right off the bat. Up here, you'll see we've got this random name here. We're going to go ahead and change this 4-inch duct port, just whatever, or something that makes sense to you, because otherwise when you download it, it's going to still have that weird name. The other thing you want to check is down in the lower right here. You want to come down to settings, and if you're like me, you're in the US, you're used to imperial settings, and since we're going off of a 4-inch pipe, we're going to switch this over to inches. I've already done that in my profile, but you'll see in a lot of cases this is set to millimeters. So you can come here and jump to inches, or if you're more used to metric, you want to go that way, keep it on metric. But we're going to kind of go with that and go ahead and close our settings. Now we've got our workspace set up. A lot of this that we're going to be working with is just with the basic shapes. So we got to start by making the plate, the base for it. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a cube, drop it in here, and we can resize this. And first off, I need the outline of it. We're going to be working with a 4-inch duct, so I need it to be a little bit bigger than that. I'm going to go 4 3/4. So if we click on this corner here, it will bring up these two dimensions, and we can actually click in these boxes. You could drag this corner out and try to get it sized right, and in this case, it really wouldn't be that hard to get it stretched out to 4 3/4. You see there it says 4 3/4. Here it says 4 5/8. Or you can click in these boxes and type in the number numerically 4.75. Now they're both 4 3/4. So either dragging or entering those dimensions manually. And now we need to add some thickness to this back plate. And so I am going to bring this down to a 1/4 inch should be fine. So this is our basic shape, and we'll be working with that. Now I'm going to add the mounting holes next. So we're going to come over here. We could grab a normal cylinder, but these kind of translucent looking ones, these are actually holes instead of solids. So if I click on this, you'll see up here it says hole. You can actually switch this over to a solid. by just selecting that, but we're going to stick with hole. These are going to be using some typical screws. So again, I'm going to resize this, and I'm thinking about 0.185, 0.185. I just tabbed over to the other dimension, and we don't need this tall. We're just going to bring this down to about 3/8. That'll help us with the alignment. So that gives us our hole size. Now we want to put them in the corners. So first thing I'm going to do is make copies of this. So we can come up here, hit copy, and then we can hit paste. And now we have a second one. Again, I can hit paste. I can drag one over to that corner, paste again, and drag one more down here. So we've got our 4 holes. Now I want to bring them in kind of a specific distance off the corner. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this object and I'm going to put this in the corner. And the nice thing is that it does want to do snapping, is where it kind of detects edges and will try to align them that way. So this did snap into this corner, which gives us our starting reference point. And now again, I can drag this out here, and you see these numbers are kind of growing here. One actually says -0.5. This one is -0.565. So I actually want them both a ½ inch in from each side. So I'm just going to go -0.5, and this one's already -0.5. So we're good there. We'll leave that. And I'm going to do the same over to these others, but you'll notice that on this one, when I bring this over into that corner, snap it in, and then drag it over, now we're in +½ inch and negative. So each one, you just need to make sure you're using the right, you don't go, if I just did this one as 0.5 instead of -0.5, it's going to put it way down there. So we want to undo that, put it back in the spot it was. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these other 2 in the corners, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, we've placed them all in there, and the way I'm kind of orbiting around this, I'm holding the right mouse button and dragging the mouse around to kind of orbit around the object, and then using the scroll wheel to zoom in. So everything looks good. They're where we want it. Now I want these holes to actually interact with that plate. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything. We're going to come up to this corner and hit the group option. And now you'll see it actually created the holes where we need them. Now, if we didn't like that, we wanted to undo it, we can actually select all of this and ungroup, and now you have your objects back the way they were separated. So it's kind of nice that you can kind of undo that throughout the whole project, but we do want it as one object. We're gonna go with that. Now I do want to round off these corners. It's less of a catch point. It looks a little bit better. We'll save a little bit of material in printing, but they don't have a good option for that by default. There is an option in the, well, actually I'm gonna undo this. So if I go back to just the raw block here, they do have this radius tool, and I can play with that. And you see it does round this corner, but it also, if you look at it, it kind of chamfers and bevels these corners too, and I don't want that. So we're going to undo that. We're going to regroup these and get those holes back in there, because I want this as one solid object. And this is one of the non-standard items you're going to do. So you're going to come over here where it says basic shapes. I think we can just search from here, and there's an item called Metafillet. Did I spell it right? Yes. And I already have it kind of favorited in mine, but we're going to click on that, and we're going to bring this in. And what this will do is kind of the inverse of that. We're going to bring this over to this corner and create it as a hole instead of a solid. And then that, when we interact the two, it's going to slice off that section. So first things first, again, I'm going to make copies of this into each of the corners so that we can do all 4. And now we can start aligning them. Now we do need to rotate most of these. Let's get this first one in place. Again, use those snapping tools. We're going to just grab this, and it's snapped to the corners, but we need to lower it. So you can do that with this little arrow, and that will bring the whole object down. So we want that at 0. And then the idea is, if I select these 2, that will trim off that corner. So that's what we're looking to do. Now we do need to rotate these other objects to be in alignment. So if you click on each object, you get these kind of rotation marks here, and then you get this circle. So if you drag your mouse out to this section, it's going to kind of lock into these various points at 45 and up. If you come out to this circle, it's more of a fine point. If you hold shift, it just drops it down to the few. So you can kind of use these snap points and that ring to get that locked in place. So this is the orientation we want. That one, same thing up here. Grab kind of our arc tool. We want that at negative 180. And this one, we're going to come over, drag it 90 degrees. Yep, there we go, 90 degrees that way. So now I just need to, once again, come and grab each one of these, get it snapped to the corner, grab the triangle, drop it down. Do that with all the edges. Snap to that block, drop it down. All right. And now we can come back up here, drag our box around, select all, and combine them. And there we have our base plate looking good as a single object. And again, if you needed to make some changes, you can come back and ungroup again and keep going back to all of them. But we're going to keep them all together as one piece. We're happy with that. Now we need to add the actual 4-inch duct to this. I'm going to come back here. We're going to clear out our search, and we need to come to basic shapes. Now they do have this tube option, which could work. But I find it a little finicky getting the wall thickness right. So I'm going to actually use a couple of cylinders. So we're going to click on that, drag one in here, and we're going to start with our outer shape. So this needs to begin with we need to resize this to our right dimensions. All right, we've got a visiting cat. Say hi, Jeff. And I need to keep working. All right, so we need to resize this. So once again, we're going to select our corner there, and we're just going to come here and go 4, tab 4. And that creates our 4-inch cylinder. Now you'll notice this is looking very kind of blocky and geometric with those shapes. We can smooth that out a little bit. It's using these various splines to create the arcs instead of a true arc. So we're going to select this, come over here to the sides, and as you see, as I adjust this, that's going to kind of smooth out, and those individual sections get smaller, or if I bring it back all the way the other way, they get even worse. So good way to kind of soften up the rounded edges on here. A lot of 3D modeling tools that are a little more basic, they don't do true arcs, and so you get this. So it's going to work. You'll see a little bit of the splines in there, but it'll be fine for our needs. So the other dimension we want to change is the height. Now this is going to go all the way through our base plate here, and I want the overall dimensions to be 1.5 inches. Oops, I'm doing the wrong one. I grabbed the triangle. We want this one will dimension it, so I want to bring this up to 1.5 inches. So now we have these two, but I need to align them. I can drag this over and get it roughly in place, but an easy way to center both these objects is select them both, come up here to this tool. This is your align tool. Click on that, and now we can use these markers to align them, either top, justify, center, bottom, left, and right. So if we just click on center, and that one is already centered, now it should be completely centered in that object, and we placed it on the bottom, so both bases are sitting together. Those look good, so now at this point I actually want to combine these. So we're going to select those two, combine them, and there we go. You'll see that it is all one solid red object. Now we need to add the port, and we need to subtract the area. So we're going to grab the same cylinder as, but this time being a hole, and I want to leave about 2/10 of a wall. It doesn't need to be quite a 1/4 inch. 1/8 inch might be a little bit light. So we need to size this, but you got to remember the diameter needs to take into account both walls. So 4 inches minus 2/10 on 2 is actually 4/10. So we come here and resize this and go 3.6, tab over to 3.6. That will make that one 3.6 in diameter. So when we drop it in here, it should leave a 0.2 wall thickness on there. Once again, I'm going to take my sides, pump that all the way up to 64. And this one I want to bring through at least to 1.5 inches. You can bring it taller. It doesn't matter with a hole. It's just going to subtract whatever it is. And then again, we're going to use that same alignment tool. I'll drag this over close, and then we will come up top, select both of them, and do our alignment tool first, and hit center, center. That should get it all in the center. And then when we combine this, it's going to subtract that middle section, leave that section all the way through. And that is it. That is our basic design for this exhaust port that we'll be able to use on the enclosure. Since I'm going to be 3D printing this at this point, I'm going to go ahead and export it. So we come up here to the export button over here, and we're just going to use it as an STL. So we just click on STL, and that will go into my downloads folder, and we can jump into Bambu Labs Studio to get this set up for the 3D printer. So all right, we've got Bambu Labs Studio opened. We've got our work area here. I'm going to be using the Bambu Lab A1. It's got the AMS on it, but we're going to just be running the black PLA. I'm using all the stock settings in here. I don't need to change anything as far as supports or whatnot. This is a very basic, straightforward design. So all I'm doing is I'm coming over to my downloads folder. We're going to drag and drop the file in, and it will read that STL, and you can kind of see everything looks good. We've got our rounded quarters, we've got our screw holes, we've got the port, and so all we really need to do is hit slice plate. It's going to go through and think. It's going to show you all the details of this. The important thing here is the amount of filament we're using, about 53 grams. It's estimating the cost at $1.30, so it's cheaper than both of our other options. And it's going to take about an hour and 45 minutes to print. So at this point, we can send it off to the printer. It's going to, I'll try to time lapse that to show a little bit of that, but we'll let it run for about an hour and 45 minutes. I might go do a little bit of other work on the enclosure. We'll come back and see how that looks when it's done. All right, the print finished, and we're back out in the shop, and this is how it came out. Everything's looking really good. The Bambu makes it super simple to make parts like these. So now let's just take a quick look at how we might fit this on here. So this is going to go on the back of the enclosure, and oftentimes you need to make connections to our hard pipe or our wall outlet using some flexible pipe like this. You always want to limit these kind of ridges and baffles make more turbulent air. It slows things down, but it's usually we need to use it for a little bit. So I'm going to be using probably 6 to 12 inches of this, depending on where it ends up on my bench. But we got to make sure this is going to fit. So we've got one of the ends, and we just want to make sure that that 4-inch diameter isn't too tight. We're just going to slide that on there. And yeah, it's a snug fit. There you go. It kind of pops on. So that gives a nice tight seal. And as a matter of fact, I almost wouldn't need a clamp on there. So possibly maybe sizing this down just by like 0.05 of an inch would help. Just make that a little bit easier to put on, but no big deal. That does fit. Now for attaching it to the back of the enclosure here, I have 1/2-inch plywood. We've got a 1/4-inch lip here. And so I'm going to use 1/2-inch to 3/4-inch screws. I happen to have these. They're little lath screws. And what I like about these are they have a kind of a big shoulder on them. So as you can see here, it's got almost like a built-in washer there. And that works well to spread out the holding power. And we created those holes in there, and these slide in real nice, but they're kind of the perfect size for an 1/8 inch or a number 8 screw. And so these will come through fairly well. I might like they stuck out a little bit more, so I might go and purchase some 3/4-inch versions of these, but those will screw on into the plywood. And then other than that, it's really just getting the hole cut in here. So we're going to do that more in the video where I'm working on this enclosure, but wanted to show an option of why 3D printers are kind of good in your workshop, how to use Tinkercad to quickly make something like this. And this only, like I said, it only less than $2 of filament, took less than 2 hours to print. I was out here doing some other stuff. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of encouragement and some insight if you've been thinking about a 3D printer or trying to figure out how to design some simple adapters and such for your builds. This is just kind of a step up from the last one we made. I'll continue to try to do more of these in the future, of designing parts for various things such as this. So hopefully this helped you out. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave that down below. Tell me what you think, maybe how you would do this differently. I always appreciate the interaction. I'll have links down below to everything if you're curious about the 3D printers. If you're looking for an adapter, the ones on Amazon and such, I'll have links to those, as well as some of the other things I use in my shop. Using those links is always a great way to support me at no extra cost to you. So thanks for watching this again. Be on the lookout for the full video of this build coming out shortly. I'm trying to get it done as quickly as I can, and I'm sure there's some people interested in that as well. Also, don't forget to check out the live streams I do with the Clack Shack Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Central Time. We hop on there for a couple hours, talk about what's going on in our shops, answering a lot of questions with people, talking about new products coming out. It's just kind of a fun interaction back and forth. A lot of it is viewer-led with questions and comments of what they're looking for and getting some help. So be sure to check that out. Hey, if you haven't subscribed, I hope maybe I've earned it today. Hit that button. Hit that like button, do all the things that help the channel out. It really does help this grow. And otherwise, we will be back soon. But in the meantime, I hope you can get onto your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.